At over 2,716 feet high, with more than 160 floors, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai currently reigns supreme as the tallest building in the world. But as mind-blowingly big as it is, the rest of the world has plans to build skyscrapers and structures that'll snatch that title in the not-so-distant future. From buildings more than a kilometer high to towers twice the size of the Burj Khalifa, not even the sky is the limit anymore. With that, let's take a look at the plans for some of the tallest buildings that will dominate our skylines in the future. The Bride. Now, the city of Basra in Iraq isn't the first location that springs to mind when you think of big buildings. But far from the war-torn city of 2003 that many people remember, Basra has slowly transformed into a new economic hub of business. And to mark this transformation, in 2013, AMBS architects put forward plans to erect a staggering skyscraper almost 3/4 of a mile high in the middle of the city. Elegantly called the Bride, this 3,780-foot building is going to be so tall that it'll tower more than 1,000 feet over the Burj Khalifa. In fact, even if the Eiffel Tower were stacked on top of the Burj, it would still be slightly shorter than this Bride to be. With 241 floors, it's designed to house offices, hotels, residences, clinics, gardens, and even its own rail network across more than 16 million square foot of floor space. This would all be encompassed inside the 4 interconnected buildings, linked by a series of sky bridges for easy travel and circulation. Sounds pretty complex, so why are they not just building one large tower instead? Well, in case of emergencies, the connected tower layout offers more accessible escape routes than a standalone skyscraper. So not only is creating a cluster of 4 towers structurally superior to a singular skyscraper, but it's also much safer. On top of that, the vast, veil-like canopy of glass and steel flowing from its 180th floor down towards the ground flares out to protect the public area below from the beating sun. Though as gorgeous as it looks, the Bride is still waiting for her big day. AMBS initially claimed the Bride would be completed by 2025, but there are no signs of work having started yet. It looks like this Bride might be waiting at the altar for a while. Obelisco Capital. Egypt is the famous home of historically massive monuments like the pyramids and the Great Sphinx, but these are about to be outshined, in both height and style, by the phenomenal pharaonic design of the Obelisco Capital. It'll be erected as the crowning jewel of the new administrative capital of Egypt, a brand new city designed to boost the country's economic development. And when it is, it stands to be the tallest building in all of Africa. But if it's completed before Basra's Bride, it could snag the title of tallest building in the entire world. At a whopping 3,280 feet tall, the construction of this astonishing obelisk would cost a sky-high $3.2 billion. For that price, it'll serve as a centerpiece of the city, consisting of about 250 floors with more than 13 million square feet of floor space piled up into the sky. For perspective, that's like stacking 233 football fields on top of one another. Thankfully, the glittering facade looks much prettier than a bunch of football fields, but that golden Art Deco design isn't just for show. Throughout the day, those golden fans rotate according to the sun's inclination, reducing the heat inside without detracting from the expensive-looking facade. That's ingenious, or at least it will be in about 10 years. While the new city has been under development since 2015, infrastructure is still being laid down, so construction on the tower won't begin until at least 2024. But it's on track to rise out of the desert sands by 2030, set to become another marvelous monument in Egypt's incredible collection. And speaking of incredible collections, If you want to be among the first to know when I add a brand new video to my YouTube library, then be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. All done? Great. Now where were we? Tower M. In 1996, the city of Kuala Lumpur erected the iconic Petronas Twin Towers, which reached a respectable 1,483 feet high. Being a little taller than the Empire State Building, these towers are currently the jewel in Malaysia's architectural crown. Although by 2035, there's a chance they're going to be outdone by this dazzling development. Known as Tower M, or the KLCC East Gate Tower, the stunning skyscraper will be built on top of a retail podium, with its sturdy foundations spread over 4 acres of land. This broad base would ensure the main tower was secure enough to stretch up a monumental 2,297 feet into the sky. While it'd be 420 feet shorter than the Burj Khalifa, it'd still lord over the neighboring Petronas Towers. With just 88 stories, the twins won't be able to compare to Tower M's proposed 145-story structure. Boasting 3 to 4 million square feet of floor space dedicated to offices, the entire tower will cost about $650 million to raise from the ground. While tentative development efforts of the tower appear to be taking place, developers KLCC aren't making any promises. They've secured the proposed lots and laid down plenty of substructure for future buildings. But disappointingly, they won't commence work on the tower until 2030. And even then, it'll only go ahead if they can ensure that demand for all the office space still exists. But with the popularity of working from home on the rise thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, this may have stopped Tower M in its massive tracks. So it looks like big building enthusiasts will be holding their breath for the next 8 years. But at least the Petronas Towers will be able to breathe easy. Merdeka PNB 118. While Kuala Lumpur is waiting to see if Tower M ever materializes, they've actually got another mega skyscraper that'll be ready to marvel at much, much sooner. Since 2014, and less than 2 miles away from Tower M's site, the Merdeka PNB 118 has been slowly rising up from the ground. By 2018, the building had reached the 50-story mark. By 2019, it had hit 80 stories. And after a few understandable pandemic-related setbacks, it's on track to reach a final 118 stories by 2025. This will raise the PNB 118 to a respectable 2,083 feet. Even though that makes it more than 100 feet shorter than Tower M, it's the only building in the world over 2,000 feet that's currently under construction. With 100 stories of office space, 17 stories for hotels and residences, and a retail center at its base, this mega skyscraper will encompass a massive 3.1 million square feet of floor space in total. To support this, the tower's structural system will be comprised of 8 mega columns around the exterior, along with a 3-story deep outrigger system that'll root the tower in place. These massive and essential components will ensure the tower has a high structural stiffness, so it can resist any and all strong winds. I mean, it may not be the tallest tower in the world, but the last thing you would want is for this thing to blow over. Considering it's costing more than $500 million to build, you certainly wouldn't want to see it end up on its side. The Big Bend. New York's skyline is home to some of the most recognizable skyscrapers in the world, but there's a new building on the block that's set to eclipse every last one of them. This is the Big Bend, a conceptual skyscraper that elegantly stretches up 2,000 feet above the city before bending in the middle and trailing back down 2,000 feet towards the earth. This means its height isn't as impressive as its overall length, which is a phenomenal 4,000 feet, give or take. So, from end to end, this building would be nearly twice the height in length as the Burj Khalifa. The astonishing design was unveiled by Oeo Studio back in 2017 as a fun attempt at circumventing New York's very strict zoning regulations. While there's no limit to the height of a building on the Manhattan skyline, The city does control a building's bulk and density by its floor area ratio. This means buildings are restricted to the square foot of the lot area, preventing developers from creating massive complexes in residential neighborhoods. But Oio gets around this by utilizing two separate lots on Billionaires Row, a district that allows developers to build up to 10 times the floor area ratio of a single lot. This means they could legally construct this brilliant bend with 100 times the floor area ratio of the two lots, providing the building connected them. While it's a hilarious way of solving the zoning regulation problem, I'm not sure how things like elevators or, physics would work on that iconic bend at the top. Sky City. With an astonishing 95 skyscrapers over 984 feet high, China is currently home to the most super tall skyscrapers in the world. But there's one they have in the works that's guaranteed to overshadow all the others. Known as Sky City, or Sky City 1, this staggering 220-story building was originally going to erupt from the verdant wetlands of Changsha in China's Hunan province. With its foundations set over an area of 280,000 square feet, its base alone would be around 5 football fields in size. From here, a planned 270,000 tons of steel would make up the bulk of the skybound structure, more than 38 times the amount of metal used in the Eiffel Tower. And all this would raise Sky City up to a record-breaking height of 2,749 feet, making it the tallest building in the world. Overtaking the Burj Khalifa by just 32 feet, the $1.46 billion building would be large enough to support over 17,400 people. With high-speed elevators and even helipads providing access to all levels of this metallic monument, it's designed less as a building and more as a futuristic, self-contained city. Although that wouldn't be the most impressive aspect. Back in 2012, before ground was broken on the project, the construction firm in charge, Broad Group, announced it would have the record-breaking building constructed in just 90 days. That's about 2.5 stories every 24 hours. After completing a 57-story version of the project called Mini Sky City in a mind-blowing 19 days, the company was clearly confident in their super speedy building abilities. But after ground was finally broken in 2013, pre-construction activities suddenly hit a brick wall. It turned out the project had failed to acquire the correct environmental permissions to build on the wetland site. Though developers fought the verdict, the idyllic spot in Changsha has since been abandoned. But in 2017, different sites were reportedly being scoped out for a future Sky City, and Broad Group has insisted that they will definitely build the tower in the future. Jeddah Tower. Dubai may currently hold the title for the world's tallest building, but their Saudi Arabian neighbors are definitely looking to steal that crown. Located in the city of Jeddah, construction on the aptly named Jeddah Tower began back in 2013, costing an eye-watering $1.23 billion to build. The architecture of this tower has some very high ambitions. When complete, its lofty peak will reach a staggering 3,281 feet into the sky. That's more than 560 feet higher than the Burj Khalifa, which would really steal Dubai's spotlight. Made up of 600 residential and hotel rooms spread over 167 floors, visitors would travel up and down the tower via a set of state-of-the-art double-decked elevators. But even with a top speed of 32 feet per second, it would still take almost 2 minutes to reach the top floor, and that's without some idiot pushing all the buttons. Elevators aside, the final structure would contain enough steel to make 8 Eiffel Towers and enough concrete to build 6 Hoover Dams. But the half-mile-high Burj Khalifa doesn't have anything to worry about just yet. Work started on bringing this cloud-piercing leviathan to life in 2013, with the podium structure and tower base reaching the 63rd floor. But then in 2018, with less than a quarter of the building complete, the Saudi Arabian purge ground all work to a halt. This national corruption crackdown saw the government seize billions of dollars in assets from high-ranking businessmen, one of whom was a chairman on the Jeddah Tower project. This scandalous setback was so severe that operations haven't been able to get off the ground since. Though the tower was meant to be ready in 2020, today it still sits unfinished at the 63rd floor, with no end date in sight. Is it just me, or did anyone else hear Dubai let out a huge sigh of relief? Dubai Creek Tower. As tall as Jeddah Tower threatens to be, Dubai isn't going down without a fight. To retain the tallest tower title, it revealed back in 2016 that it would be building the unbelievably sleek-looking Creek Tower. This $1 billion structure was designed to beat out the city's already standing Burj Khalifa by stretching up somewhere between 3,045 and 3,300 feet into the sky. However, the exact figure is being kept under wraps to prevent other competitive projects, like Jeddah Tower, from preemptively stealing its spotlight. But despite all that height, it'll have just 20 residential floors, along with 10 observation decks in a minaret-shaped bud at its top. This minimalist design stems from the tower's single concrete column, which is supported by a huge net of steel cables to keep it secured in place. Admittedly, this makes it more of a monument than a real skyscraper, but it does show off Dubai's engineering prowess while keeping that coveted title safe at the same time. Or at least it would if construction ever got above ground level. Back in 2018, the tower's main foundation was laid by pouring 1.7 million cubic feet of concrete into the ground. This created a pile cap that was more than 65 feet thick and weighed a whopping 132,000 tons. But suddenly, construction hit a brick, or in this case, concrete, wall. Fallout from the 2008 financial crash, along with a huge drop in oil prices, hit the city's oil-reliant economy hard. The financial downturn meant large vanity projects, like Creek Tower, couldn't move forward. It was supposed to be unveiled at the 2020 World Expo, but sadly, that never happened. Although its developers are adamant it'll be ready by the end of 2022. However, a quick look at Google Earth reveals that right now, it's still just one big concrete cap in the ground. Sky Mile Tower. While a lot of countries are racing to build skyscrapers that reach the illustrious 1-kilometer mark, Japan is setting its sights much, much higher with the aptly named Sky Mile Tower. Peaking at 5,577 feet tall, this gargantuan design would make Sky Mile Tower more than twice the height of the Burj Khalifa. For a more American comparison, that's more than 18 times the height of the Statue of Liberty. Dubbed Next Tokyo, this mega project was designed to tackle Tokyo's overpopulation problem, which currently has more than 14 million people crammed into just 845 square miles. But Next Tokyo, built over Tokyo Bay, would have room to house 55,000 people comfortably over a staggering 421 floors, serving as a sort of city within a city. Spread over 4.5 million square feet, the tower will form a vertical network of residential communities, connected by multi-level sky lobbies. These will offer amenities like hotels, gyms, libraries, and clinics for residents. The island it's based on will be equipped with wind, solar, and algae farms to make it as self-sustaining as possible. It sounds like a self-contained utopia, but how does Japan plan to reach these heights? Well, initial designs rely on 3 building legs that are interconnected hexagonally, giving way to 3 more legs further up. These continuously overlap the further up the building they reach, allowing for superior structural stability. But it's those holes in the facade that are the most important to the tower's overall design. At these heights, the pressure of the winds is a greater threat to a building than the superimposed loads on the floor, because the tower effectively acts as one big sail. To combat this, vertical slots have been peppered throughout the facade, allowing wind to pass through the building with minimal disruption. As fantastically futuristic as it looks, this tremendously tall building is still, sadly, just a concept. But if it does get the green light to become one of the world's most iconic skyscrapers, it could be ready as early as 2045. Shimizu Megacity Pyramid. Believe it or not, Sky Mile Tower isn't Japan's first conceptual mega-tall mega-city. Back in 1996, the Shimizu Corporation drew up this surprising pyramidal proposal, which looked like something that had been plucked straight out of the sci-fi Blade Runner, though its futuristic design isn't as impressive as its proportions. With its grounding points spread over the waters of Tokyo Bay, the structure would encompass over 3 square miles of floor space, with its peak reaching an incredible 6,575 feet high. This would make it roughly 14 times larger than the Great Pyramids of Giza, and the biggest man-made object on the entire planet. The foundations holding the structure up would rely on around 81 piers, made from a specialized concrete, supporting a series of 5 stacked trusses leading up to the top. This extraordinary triangular exoskeleton would then suspend a series of living quarters, recreational spaces, and entire neighborhoods inside, with room to support up to 1 million residents. But just how were people meant to get around in a huge pyramid hovering above the ocean that had no streets or cars? At the time, the answer was accelerated walkways, inclined elevators, and automated rapid transport pods. It sounds so incredibly innovative that you're probably wondering why, more than 20 years on, it hasn't been built yet. Well, that's because, disappointingly, there's no material on Earth that's light or strong enough to support such a massive structure. And if just one truss failed, 1 million people could be sent careening into the sea. Enough said. However, the recent development of the super strong materials like graphene, which is 200 times stronger than steel ounce for ounce, would technically make building this pyramid possible. So, there's a very small chance this mega project might break ground, or waves, as early as 2030. With such a promising pyramid on the horizon, I bet Egypt are quaking in their sandals. Millennium Challenge 1852. Like the Shimizu Pyramid, a lot of futuristic, mega-tall structures are sadly limited by current building materials, methods, and designs. But there's one that takes all of this into account and still finds a way to break that magical 1-mile barrier. This astonishing structure is the Millennium Challenge 1852, also known as the Al Jaber Tower for its future placement in Kuwait City. When it was proposed back in 2005 by Italian architect Omero Marchetti, he designed it to be the first building to reach a full nautical mile in height. For those unfamiliar with marine terms, that's a little over a regular mile, at an unbelievable 6,076 feet. This would make it more than twice the height of the Burj Khalifa, which at the time had only just started construction. It was a daring architectural feat, and Marchetti knew traditional construction methods reliant on concrete and block grids wouldn't provide the level of sturdiness the building needed. So, Marchetti experimentally removed most of the right angles and perpendicular elements from his design, along with his need for any cast iron or concrete materials. Like that wasn't a mad move on its own, he then focused on the hexagonal matrices of, you'll never guess, snowflakes. As strange as it sounds, structurally, hexagonal designs, like those seen in snowflakes and honeycomb, do efficiently support objects that combine high volumes with low weight. And the result was this wonderfully irregular spire set to tower over Kuwait City. While Marchetti claimed he had many investors lined up to help make the angular building a reality, nothing more about the project has been revealed since. For more than 15 years, its development has remained something of a mystery, leaving the world to wonder when its Millennium Challenge will be conquered. The Space Elevator. For the best part of a century, rockets have been the only way to get anything up to space. But in the very near future, this could be done in the form of a gigantic, space-bound elevator. Now, I admit this wouldn't be any kind of building or skyscraper, but by extending from the Earth's surface up to an altitude of 22,000 miles, this unimaginably tall megastructure would be the largest and tallest engineering construction project ever undertaken by humanity. So for that, I think it definitely belongs on this list. As crazy as it sounds, NASA claims the science behind the space elevator actually checks out. The concept was first thought up back in 1895 by a Russian scientist named Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Although what he suggested was a celestial castle in orbit with the Earth attached to a tower on the ground, so something that would look a bit like a supersized Eiffel Tower. But more than 120 years on, instead of building a palace in the sky, space agencies want to build motorized elevator pods that are powered up to space via one long tether. Stretching up from a spaceport at the equator, the elevator would lead to a space station in orbit overhead, and the centrifugal forces of Earth's rotation would hold the entire structure aloft. Theoretically, rockets, satellites, and even people could be shipped into space this way, opening up a brand new gateway into space tourism that would make Elon Musk jealous. Even though the structure alone would cost a mind-blowing $10 billion to build, NASA claims it would be less risky and cheaper to fund than a lot of pre-existing space programs. Considering the current cost of launching anything into space is roughly $3,500 per pound, the space elevator could achieve that for as little as $25 per pound. So what are we waiting for? Why am I not halfway to the moon right now? Well, that's because traditional building materials like steel would make any giant tether too heavy to launch into orbit. But that previously mentioned ultra-strong material, graphene, could be just the ticket. However, the molecular honeycomb structure of graphene makes it incredibly difficult to produce. To date, it's only been spun into meter-long strands, so it's a long way off from being able to reach up into space. There's also the issue of speed, because even if the elevators could travel up to a theoretical top speed of 190 miles per hour against gravity, it would still take 5 days to travel up 22,000 miles. A bit of a long ride to see the stars, if you ask me. However, that hasn't stopped China and Japan starting pre-construction work on their own space elevators, claiming they'll be complete as early as 2045. And that sounds like one small step for man, one giant elevator ride for mankind. Which of these superstructures do you most want to see completed? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.